this time a couple of words about Australians. I just had another meeting and lecture about the meeting with the students and the lecture. It's in form of a free discussion about the stereotypes about a given nation, this time Australians, and then starts the part with my lecture explaining what could be the reason of those stereotypes emerging, which is mostly connected with my knowledge as a historian, but not only that. So when we are discussing those nations which were created with the British by Great Britain, so to speak, that is, for instance, starting from the smallest one, New Zealand and Australia, but also Canada and the United States, of course, the Colossus. They were all created by Great Britain. So when we are talking about one of those cultures, we usually tend to use the others as a starting point. And even if we don't see it happening without our knowledge. So when we take, even now when I'm speaking about Australia, I use, in some sentences I'm using more British accent, and in some sentences I just see that I use more American style. I will not try to use Australian accent because I know only in small particles what constitutes Australian accent. I don't really know a whole sound. The Australian accent is so when we are talking about getting back to this thought. When we are talking about various Anglo-Saxon cultures, we usually use the others as a starting point when we are talking, and also for comparison, of course. The same is with Spanish-speaking nations, which are also several, and they were all created by one European country, Spain, of course. So a very similar situation. So, but we don't, the same with speaking Spanish nations, we sometimes don't remember that, for instance, Uruguay or Argentina are mostly ethnically European, whereas Mexico is like 50-50 with the Indians, and Peru or Bolivia are mostly Indian. So especially Bolivia. So we sometimes forget that one of the reasons why those nations don't merge together, for instance, in South America, that's because they have a different heritage, different ethnicities. The same with all those countries which are distant from each other, except for Australia and New Zealand, which are neighbors. But they are also totally different from one from another. When, for instance, Canada is basically Scottish plus French, because Canada was created in a normal imperial way. That means that the Celtic, the Irish and Scottish, British imperialistic officials working for the British Empire enterprise, so to speak, they were mostly Celtic, because they were mostly Irish and Scottish, because the Irish and Scottish were in the flawed meritocracy of Britain. They were less they had some obstacles on their way to become a very important official. So the offices in Britain were mostly for the English. So they had to be more engaged, and they were indeed more engaged in British Empire, in constructing British Empire. In India there were many Irish, for instance. Irish, British, but Irish officials. And in Canada the same with Scots. The United States is like when we take all these smaller cultures out, the United States is ethnically like 1/3 German, 1/3 English, 1/3 Mexican, so to speak. or Latino in general. So so we have a Scottish, French, Canada. We have English, German, Latino, United States. We have also Scottish and Celtic New Zealand, because